There's some sort of a smorgasbord there. And they were swimming alongside the ship, just like on Jacques Cousteau. And, so it was pretty incredible. And then we did a tradition there, which is to swim when you cross the equator. So they stopped the boat, and we all got out and jumped into the water. And some of us jumped from higher than others. So that was fun. And then we got to our stop on Halmahera Island, which is the biggest island we visited. It's quite large and has a lot of different habitats. And this was a village that's literally not on any map. It was some people, there had been some unrest in this part of the world about 15 years ago, and this village had been hiding, and they only recently came back down to the shore to settle. And so they aren't recorded yet. But you can see the smoke there and all the palms. They grow copra there, which is dried coconut for their sustenance. And there we are getting out on the shore. And we were able to see a really neat plant. This is an ant plant, a Hydnophytum species that David Fairchild collected back when he came in the 40s. And this was the village there, so they built quite a bit in a few years. And look at all the crotons in their gardens there. See, they have many different crotons. It's a nice little, and one cycad. It's interesting. That was often what you'd see in these villages. And this was one of their little copra operations here. So they would open the coconuts, take out the meat, and smoke it, and dry it out. And then we went hiking back into the forest, and we saw this very interesting palm back here, which was a baby pigafetta, David Fairchild's favorite, but also got a chance to see this wonderful little natural bonsai fig, Ficus ischnopoda, that we have a couple of now from a previous trip, but it was neat to see them growing here by the river. And this was the young pigafetta palm there. It's beautiful white leaf stalks. A fig tree here, covered with figs. And this was one of the neat aroids that grows up trees there, Rhaphidophora. And some great roots. Lots of great roots on this trip. And this was one of the many beautiful palms we saw there, but I'm just going to mention this one because I asked Dr. Lewis what this was, and he wasn't sure. So he's a palm expert, and so this was a very special palm. We knew it was an Arenga species, but he wasn't sure, and he knows the palms here pretty well. So then the next day, we got up about 2:30 a.m. so that we could get to the mainland and get on a caravan of trucks to cross the island to catch birds of paradise doing their mating dance in the morning. And so this is when we got off into the forest after a long, it was about a 2.5-hour car ride. And yeah, the quality of these is not very good because it was very dark. But these are Wallace's standard wing bird of paradise. And so this was a favorite spot they had, and there was a Dutch fellow who had actually established a reserve for them, and had spent years trying to find where they were doing their dances, and found this spot. And this is not. This was a photo of a professional who had gone there and who before. They're quite a beautiful bird. And this was the walk back when the light had gotten better, and Dr. Lewis studying a palm there or something. And then we actually went later on in an afternoon to look at an area that had very interesting high metal soils and very unusual plants called serpentine soils. And it's actually an area that has a nickel mine now, so that's why the slopes were all cut away here. So these areas with high metal soils often have really interesting plants. This was one of them, a gymnostoma plant. And then this is Dr. Jestro there. He found very special nepenthes that had only recently been described. So this is a type of carnivorous plant. So these are, they call them pitcher plants, tropical pitcher plants. So insects will get caught inside these pitchers and they get digested, and it's a way of supplementing their nutrients when they're growing in these really nutrient-poor areas. And so this was had soil that was really high in metals and low in a lot of nutrients like nitrogen. So this plant was really well adapted for that. so some other interesting plants. This is an interesting aroid that was growing there. It was quite interesting. And this is a very strange plant that we have one of in the garden. It's in a genus called Flagellaria. Whips are generally called flagella. And so the ends of its leaves create these little spirals and then will hook onto other vegetation as it climbs. So it was neat to see this in the wild. And we ended the day at this little resort on Wada Bay. So we had these little cabins. They're owned by the fellow who has this reserve for the birds of paradise on this beautiful bay here with a lot of wonderful coral reefs. And we had a wonderful lunch. And let's see. And this was some photos that Eva, one of our guides, took of some of the... And so when we were snorkeling, it was like this all the time. Incredibly colorful, beautiful. Some of the reefs were better than others, but I mean, just the diversity and vibrance of the living things underwater were just stunning. Just like what you'd expect to see on a nature documentary. And we did see more pigafettas on the same island David Fairchild saw. This was a photo that Fairchild had taken. And this same stand of palms is still there. And one of the spectacular sunsets there with the sun streaming through the clouds around one of the peninsulas as we came down. And then there was a rainstorm coming as we departed shore to get on the boat.
That's cool.
And you can see this is the boat's typical evening scene. You can see the clouds kind of descending on the upper hills of the island. And so next we went to a small island called Makian Island that David Fairchild and his group had visited in 1940. And it's interesting how you can see how these islands actually catch clouds. You know, the forests up there, they actually kind of make their own weather. And this was kind of fascinating because I just read a study of, there's an island called St. Helena in the South Atlantic that used to be very barren, and in the 19th century, people like Darwin and Joseph Hooker and some of the other great naturalists decided to do an experiment of planting trees on it. And they actually were able to start developing a forest, and then clouds started to form and rain starts to form. And now the top of that mountain is also, of that island, that very remote island, is now a forest and gets rain where before it was a desert. And you can see how this happens on these islands. Because these islands, you know, one time were the barren cone of the tops of volcanoes. You know, these are just the very tops of enormous underwater formations. So this is just the very top of an underwater mountain. And so this was a little village we visited, and once again, more children and more spices. So this is more of this, a lot of cloves there drying. And we visited a school, brought them more soccer equipment. And then we went to this well, which the Fairchilds had visited back in 1940, and it was still there. So that was pretty neat. And that's the well back in 1940, so hadn't changed a whole lot. And that's our whole group around the well. And then we headed far north to an island called Kahatola Island, where there's a place where David Fairchild had discovered a new begonia species, which is only now being described. And he stopped by this, there's a waterfall back here. And this was in 1940, the waterfall. And today, it's not that different. And this was the begonia. The begonia is still there. And it's being actually, Dr. Carl Lewis had brought it to the attention of one of the staff at the Bogor Botanic Garden, who's an expert in begonias, and it actually brought him out here to collect it, and it's being described. It will be, when it gets published, the Begonia Fairchildii, so it will be named in honor of David Fairchild.
That's cool.
So we only found a couple of them. This is the look at the little bay with the waterfall. And one of the other neat plants we saw there, this is the rhizomes of an ant fern, type of fern. These rhizomes are hollow and they're full of ants. So if you brush up against them or break one, the ants come streaming out. And the ants protect the fern and they fertilize it. And I was really keen to do a little more adventuring on this island, so I convinced Brett and Jason to hike up behind the waterfall, see if we could find the top of the waterfall. And so we did, and this was from up high on the mountain, on the island there, looking down on the boat. So this is where the waterfall comes down there, so we were able to get to that spot. And on our way back, David Fairchild had mentioned his interest in these big outcrops from these called sea stacks, these big rock outcrops. And then we saw those very ones, looking pretty much the same, just from the other side. Even with palms perched way up on top of them. And this is what the perspective was like on the boat. And there were people out fishing. And yeah, Jason said he saw a shark's fin somewhere.
Yeah, he did.
That was the only, nobody else saw anything other than, the small sharks that live under coral and whatnot, fortunately. So, these are just some of the scenery on our way back south to the final leg of our trip. And so yeah, this is the island of Ternate, which we flew out of. You can see how the island's making their own clouds, essentially. And this is Tidore Island, which was our last field trip. And I'm going to play for you this video that Victor made narrating a passage by Tidore.
Tidore. Tidore.
So that captured the mood. So these were the little taxis. We didn't take these, we took more regular cars, but it's neat to see the different methods of transportation. So we were able to hike up through groves of cloves. So this is the spice cloves, and we tried chewing some, and they really numb your tongue. And we got up to a cloud forest that was full of some really interesting poems. Dr. Lewis had actually rediscovered a poem that hadn't been collected in a couple centuries, that nobody had been able to find on another island, but when he got here, he rediscovered it. And 4 of us made it up there. Jack, who's here, was with us, and Brett, Dr. Lewis, and I made it up. And there were some beautiful orchids, some ground orchids for us. This is another one right here. It was about to bloom, and this is a view up into the forest canopy there. So we were literally in those clouds, and the trees were reaching right up into those clouds. So it was a really beautiful experience. And then, so after that big last field trip up into the cloud forest, we had our farewell dinner at night and also a farewell concert. And so we were eating very well, lots of wonderful fish and vegetables and meats and fruit. And this was an interesting kind of, when we see the food that looks like this here, we're usually suspicious it's got some sort of strange color, like green number 12. Right? But over in this part of the world, usually they're natural. Most colors are natural, and this is actually a color that's made from a type of pandanus leaf that actually David Fairchild liked a lot. They also it's got a very aromatic flavor, this pandanus, and they use it for flavoring rice and whatnot. And David Fairchild was really excited about it back when he visited this part of the world, but when he tried to bring it back, they died. Unfortunately, we brought them back from Thailand and whatnot. But they make these wonderful desserts that are green, and it's a pandanus dessert if it's green. So that's kind of neat. And a neat little legacy that's already beginning of some of the plants we saw and photographed. Our local students who were part of the Fairchild Challenge have been making illustrations of the plants of the Spice Islands. So these are some plants that they drew as part of that challenge from the photos we sent back on Twitter and other places. Some quite lovely work. Here's David Fairchild's Big Feta, so they even labeled it. And so that was the end of our Spice Islands adventure, and we had a little epilogue in Singapore. So most people went on to Singapore afterwards, and Singapore is a little more comfortable than our accommodations on the way. And it's a very modern place. This is Gardens by the Bay. I'm not going to go into any details because many of you have already seen presentations on Singapore. But we got a chance to see the light show. But this was something you probably haven't seen. So this is Victor again. So this might be the world's biggest orchid. This is in Singapore Botanic Gardens. It's a giant tiger orchid. And it might be the last wild orchid there of this species. And it's behind a fence now. It's just enormous. And so Victor wanted to smell it, but it was a little out of reach. So,
Well, that's good.
he succeeded.
The advantage of being tall.
And a neat little story that's not well known about Singapore Botanic Gardens is, in the old days, they used to rake up all their leaves. It was a very neat and tidy garden, which is in the English tradition. But then one of their horticulturists felt that it would be healthier for the trees to have natural leaf litter under them and instead of grass. So they started experimenting with that, with letting the leaves lie where they were. And that actually attracted lots of new insect life, other things, and then it brought back this very endangered monitor lizard, the clouded monitors, which love to eat the worms and insects and larvae in the leaf litter. So what used to be extremely rare, now you can see them all over. And they're a very friendly monitor. You can just walk up to them. They aren't really bothered, they aren't aggressive or anything, so that was a neat thing. And so this was where we brought back some special plants so that we would have plants from our plant adventure. And one of the plants that impressed most of us was this wonderful little dwarf papaya that only got about 5 feet high and made very delicious golden papayas. And so this was in the municipal nursery in Singapore. And so they gave us some samples of some of their local varieties. This was that papaya. And so we brought back seeds of that papaya that are germinating really well in the nursery. This was a personal favorite of mine that I was really happy to be able to bring back. This is a Delenia species, which are a small tree that will actually flower. They make yellow flowers. But this is one that produces these really scarlet red leaves. And under high enough light, apparently the whole plant becomes red. So they were very kind to share some cuttings and actually a plant. And actually have that here, the plant, which is doing quite well. It's actually already flowered, but it's not currently flowering. But it's recovered from its trip with all the leaves cut back and everything. And it's even got flower buds coming here. So. About
How big was it when you brought it back?
It was about there, so. Lots more. It's only been about 2 months, but you never know when you have to bear with these plants and how they're going to react to being transplanted. Unfortunately, this one did well. This was Copsia singaporensis, which a relative of our plumerias that smells wonderful. The flowers smell wonderful, so we brought back some of that. And another species of Copsia. This is a beautiful Bauhinia vine we brought back. This is a Freycinetia, like a climbing pandanus, that has these giant purple leaves. And then when it flowers, the base of the leaves turn orange, and then that will open up and we'll have all these tiny flowers inside. That's doing well. These are some of the beautiful gymnosoma trees in Singapore Botanic Garden. We collected seeds of those. And then I made a quick trip to the Cameron Highlands in Malaysia to collect more plants from the nurseries there. This is a beautiful Medinilla that was covered with white flowers all over its stems. And we went up into the cloud forest. So this is something I did. This was after the rest of the group had departed to their parts. I stayed on for about another week and a half after that. And it's one of the wild nepenthes we saw there. This was one of the mountain rhododendrons of Southeast Asia. We got to go up into this really beautiful cloud forest, all full of wonderful plants. This is a very unusual fern that was growing with one of my colleagues for scale there. Beautiful tree ferns in the mist up on the mountains. And this is an area that's really a powerhouse of agriculture. They have all these greenhouses for growing food crops, for growing ornamentals. Many of them are being grown for the Singapore gardens, actually. This was a giant pillbug. I had no idea that such a thing existed. It was more than an inch in diameter. and perfectly fit when it rolled up. Its head was right there, fit into a perfect slot. And this was one of the neat plants we saw that's becoming quite popular in horticulture there. It's a Dracaena cambodiana. It's a really elegant one, and so we brought back cuttings of that that are doing well, and one of them's over there. And some of the beautiful terminalias that also I think have potential here. And so ended up bringing back about 120 species from Singapore and Malaysia, and so this is I was staying at the Singapore Botanic Garden, so I always feel sad with the cleanup crew after I'm there, because plant processing is a messy job. And but then in the end, it's all the plants neatly tucked into a suitcase, hopefully, and inspected and ready to come back. And because this is really what it's all about. David Fairchild said that even as romantic as traveling is, there's nothing quite as romantic as bringing back plants at the end. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
I'm curious about the barren islands. What would have kept them from being vegetated all this time? For instance, by birds flying over. What kept them?
Oh, you mean St. Helena, the islands?
Yeah.
You mean that it was there? I think it just was, it's so isolated. It's out in the middle of the Atlantic. It's not close to anything.
Oh.
It wasn't where we were, it was St.
Yeah, where we were, that was just kind of a side story. That's an island out in the middle of the Atlantic. It was just kind of, because seeing how these volcanic islands, would basically create their own little cloud mass above them due to the forest. But those islands would have started out barren and then also gotten vegetated by things. But some islands are so remote they don't have that.
Yeah, I like that. That yellow that you pictured, were you able to bring that one back?
Not yet.
No.
Actually, that was in a forest, so they need to, in order to conform to all the regulations and stuff, they're going to need to propagate it. And so we put it in order. So hopefully this year.
Does it have an ID?
What's that?
Does it have an ID?
Not yet, yeah. But it was beautiful. The stems are just covered with,
Yeah,
I've never seen anything quite like it. So.
Were you able to bring spices back from Spice Islands?
Didn't bring any spices.
Some people did.
But some people did? Okay, good. I guess some people did. Excellent.
How hot was it? Like here or hotter?
Most of the time it was pretty, I felt it was pretty comfortable, but I think that some of the folks would disagree. But
It was too hot?
Yeah, it'd be like here in the summer many times, but then, in the evenings it would be nice and cool. We were on the water a lot, so, and the fact that there's so much ocean there keeps things from being that extreme, it's not,
We're air conditioned.
in the 90s sometimes, and we did have air conditioning at night in our cabins, which helped. Yeah, so I thought it was pretty comfortable.
It's amazing. You should make a calendar of some of those pictures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, would you like to do the plant auction? I guess most of us are wondering, Chad, are these included? I thought so.
Yeah, in the future, yeah.
I had to ask.
I seriously doubted it.
Not
Hey,
happening.
it doesn't hurt to ask.
Before Paul gets started, I'd like to thank everyone who brought in the refreshments.
Yeah.
This is getting better and better each time.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
You record that.
Yeah.
Get it out of the way, yeah, I know.
Okay, first up, says Vania grandiflora, hummingbird tree. This is the red version. There's also a white version.
The leaves close at night.
What's that?
The leaves close at night.
Flowers don't though, so that's good.
Yeah.
The flowers are edible, cooked up into fritters. Kind of a short-lived tree, blooms in the winter, fall, winter, spring. And like I said, it's called hummingbird tree because it looks like a hummingbird. Hummingbirds could care less, but can we get $5 on the hummingbird tree? 5, can we get 6? 6, can we get 7? 7, can we get 8? About 15 foot. 8. We get 9. 8 going once, twice, sold. What's your name?
Here,
Terry?
Gary?
Terry.
Okay, for 8.
It's kind of heavy. We have a shrub here, Megascopasma erythroclamides. Grows in full sun, partial shade, full shade. Blooms year-round, heaviest fall, winter, spring. It's also called Brazilian cloak. And butterflies and hummingbirds do like it. Acanthaceae family. Get about 8-10 feet tall.
Yeah.
Shorter in full sun, taller in shade. So do we have $5 on the 5? Do we have 6? 6. Do we have 7? 7. Do we have 8? 8. Do we have 9? 9. Do we have 10? 9 going once, twice, sold.
Margie?
So lucky end.
Taking notes before.
Yes, that's me.
Okay. This is an angel trumpet. It's called Emily McKenzie. Has one of the has one of the biggest pink flowers of any angel trumpet. They're easily 16 inches long. So,
Fragrance?
oh yeah, yeah, really fragrant. It's like overwhelming me in the car driving over here. Is that the? Is that the Eucharist or is that the angel trumpet? The two together were fighting. Pass that one around. That actually smells. So can we get $5 on the angel trumpet? Emily McKenzie. 5 in the back. Can we get 6? 6. Can we get 7? 7. Can we get 8? 7 going once. Carol. 8.
Sorry. Sorry, Carol.
9. We have 9 in the back. We have 10. 9 going once, twice, sold, Craig. No. Okay, this is a new plant. This is called Garvinia. It's a kind of Gerbera hybrid. These are bred for garden performance. They crossed a wild species from South Africa with cultivated Gerberas. These go perennial in Miami. I had 4 plants, had 50 flowers on them. And they do multiply and clump up, and they're tissue culture. And they're resistant to powdery mildew and make good landscape plants here. And they're cold hardy, at least I know of, in Gainesville. So, Garvinia. Also going to be available from Home Depot called Daisyland is the series. But this pink purple one is probably one of the better ones. Flowers a little small, but they have a lot of them. We get $5 on the Gerber. 5. We got 6, 7, 8, 8. We have 9, 9. 10, 10. 11. 10 going once, twice, sold. And like I said, those are going to be available at Home Depot's in about 5 colors. Yellow, orange, pink, and purple.
Sorry.
You should have warned me. Jessica's gravel soil here. This is giant milkweed.
Yeah.
Calopteris gigantea, the purple form. This is a really good plant to have in your yard. Makes a big bush. Monarch butterflies like it. They don't like to lay their eggs on it, but it's a good plant to have, so when they chew up your other milkweeds, they'll crawl in here and survive. So this is not their first choice to lay eggs because it doesn't have a lot of toxin in it, but it is a good plant to keep them going. Makes a big bush, about 6-8 feet high, sometimes bigger, 4 feet wide, and tolerates a little drought. Can we get $10 on the milkweed? 10, can we get 11? 10, 11, going 12. 12, going 13. 13, going 14. 14, going 15. 14, 15? 15, going 16. 16, going 17. 16, going once, twice, sold.
Gonna be busy, Jack.
Careful, that's heavy. When I say heavy, it's heavy.
Sorry.
Here's another one of the same thing. Not exactly sure the color. It could be white or it could be blue. But another milkweed. Can we get $5? Giant milkweed?
Yes.
5. Can we get 6? 6. Can we get 7? 7. Can we get 8? Okay, 7 going once, twice, sold. 2 plants in there.
Linda? Yeah.
These should be coming into bloom pretty soon. Tababuya ipe.
They are blooming up in Central Florida,
Okay.
like full bloom.
Okay. These get pink purple flowers in the spring. And fast growing tababuyas. They like a little cold, but they will do fairly well here most years. Can we get $5 for tababuya? 5 in the back. Can we get 6? 5 going once, twice, sold. Okay, Vera wood. Bolinesia arborea, Venezuelan tree, dark glossy green leaves, yellow flowers about 3 times a year. Really nice showy tree.
Heavy bloom in summer.
And they bloom other times a year too.
Heavy bloom.
But yeah, so they have one heavy and 2 light blooms. Usually they were always in bloom for Mother's Day sale.
Yeah.
Maybe. We get $10 on the Bolinesia. We get $5 on the Bolinesia. Okay, take it back. This is the hibiscus.
Simosia umbellata.
No longer hibiscus, huh?
Nope. It's called Mexican mallow.
Mexican mallow. So it's in the Malvaceae family, or so the genus is
Phimosia.
Phimosia.
PH.
PHI.
PHY.
Phimosia. And the species?
Oh, umbellata.
Umbellata. And they're usually this dark red, or they're
Yep.
sometimes pink, or they fade?
No, they're red.
So they don't change color like
They get
Confederate
a little
rose.
darker, but
They just come out this color and go darker?
yeah.
Okay. And tree, shrub,
It's like a small, like a medium shrub, and it blooms most of the year. And the pollen inside is really heavy. So like if you dust the flower, pollen comes right out. But the bees, you can hardly get a picture of this
Without
plant
bees.
without bees inside. I mean, they just love it, and it blooms all the time. And it's very cold tolerant. My dad grows them up in zone 9.
and no damage.
No,
But in the cold, not so many flowers.
no, it just blooms all the time.
Its common name is Mexican
Mallow.
Mexican mallow. We get $10 on the Mexican mallow. 10. We get 11. 10 going 11. We get 12. 12. We get 13. 13. Going 14. 14. Going 15. 15. Going 16. 16. Going 17. 17. You want? Oh, 16. Going once, twice. Sold. got a little beat up in the trip, but Salvia coccinea, great Florida native, butterfly, bee, hummingbird plant, grows well in partial shade or full sun, and reseeds itself, so you plant one, you'll have many. We get $5 on the salvia. 5, can we get 6? 5 going once, twice, sold. And then we have some Sansevieria cylindrica in flower. Not too fragrant.
What is it?
It's a
I have it
succulent,
growing in my succulent garden, it only gets watered when it rains.
so no irrigation. Easy to grow. Some is related species, the mother-in-law's tongue. They've put it in closets for 6 months to a year and they survived.
Really?
We're
talking about the mother-in-law?
The plant, not the mother-in-law. The plant survived. I don't know about the mother-in-law. That might be a little rough after 6 months. Can we get $2 on the Sansevieria? 2. Can we get 3? 3. Can we get 4? 4. Can we get 5? 5. Can we get 6? 6. Can we get 7? 7. 8? 8. Can we get 9? 8 going once, twice, sold. Guaranteed to flower. What's that?
Your Belizeia.
Okay, we'll try the Belizeia here. You see the picture? $5 on the Belizeia. 5. Any other bids? Going. Okay. $5 going once. $6. We get 7. We get 8. 7 going once. Twice. Sold. Wow. Okay. Another Sansevieria. You want water for 5? You want for 6? 6. You want for 7? 7. 7. Going once, twice, sold. And we have one more. Actually, we have 3 more, but. Want it for 5? Anyone else?
So is that
5
all
here.
it does? Like, that's it?
That's it. It's a ground cover succulent. It's in full bloom. And I have 2 more. Anybody else want one for 5? You want one? Which one? Last one. Anybody else want the last one? 5? What's things worse than that? There are things worse than that. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thanks for the refreshments.